Tonight, we stand in the year 1100, beneath a sky heavy with monsoon clouds, while the first stones of Angkor Wat begin to rise from the Cambodian plain. Archaeologists from major research institutions, including teams connected with the Smithsonian and leading university projects in Southeast Asian archaeology, have studied this landscape through inscriptions, excavations, aerial mapping, and laser surveys. Their work confirms something almost difficult to hold in the mind. This was not only a temple, but part of one of the largest urban worlds of the pre-modern age. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the night settles around you, write your location and local time in the comments, so this quiet journey can begin from many rooms, in many countries, under many different skies. You are standing near water. It is dark, warm, and still. The air smells of wet earth, crushed leaves, smoke, and distant cooking fires. Somewhere beyond the palms, an insect begins its thin metallic song. The ground is soft beneath your feet, and the great moat before you holds the fighting color of the sky like polished bronze. Across that water, Angkor Wat appears slowly, not all at once. At first, you see only a shadow, a long dark wall stretched across the edge of dawn. Then the towers emerge, shaped like lotus buds, lifting from the horizon with impossible patience. They do not seem built for a single human life. They seem to belong to a larger rhythm, one measured in kings, stars, floods, and memory. This is the early 12th century, though no one near you would call it that. To the people working here, the world is counted by rains, rituals, seasons, and the swelling of waters. The land is alive with movement, even while the temple itself feels silent. Men carry baskets. Oxen strain against wooden harnesses. Priests move in pale garments, their feet darkened by mud. Children watch from the edges, pretending not to be fascinated, which is very childish and very human. The forest is not empty here. It presses close, green and breathing, but it is not wild in the simple way a stranger might imagine. Paths run beneath the trees, canals cut through the land. Settlements spread outward in patterns almost invisible from the ground. Rice fields shimmer in the low places, catching light like broken mirrors. Smoke rises from house platforms built above damp soil. Records and inscriptions confirm that Angkor was the seat of a powerful Khmer kingdom, a world of kingship, devotion, labor, and water. Modern scholars, including historians at Yale and archaeologists working with international mapping projects, have described Angkor not as one lonely ruin in the forest, but as a vast inhabited landscape. That fact matters, because it changes the way you see the temple. You are not looking at an isolated monument. You are entering a system. The temple stands within a city, and the city stands within an empire. Roads reach outward like veins. Reservoirs glimmer across the plain. Canals gather, guide, and release the monsoon. The people here understand water with a seriousness that is almost spiritual. Too much water means ruin. Too little means hunger. Properly held, water becomes rice, labor, tribute, ceremony, and power. And at the center of this arrangement, stone begins to speak. The stone does not speak loudly. It waits. Angkor Wat is often called the largest religious monument ever built. And even that phrase feels strangely small. It covers a huge rectangular enclosure bordered by a moat broad enough to quiet the world. Its galleries, causeways, towers, courtyards, stairways, and bas-reliefs form a sacred map. The whole structure seems to pull the eye inward, toward the central sanctuary, where earthly rule reaches toward divine order. For a moment, it feels as though the builders are not simply constructing a temple. They are persuading the universe to remain balanced. That is the mystery resting beneath the stone. Why here? Why this scale? Why such mathematical confidence in a landscape of rain, heat, insect, and shifting soil? A smaller shrine could have honored the gods. A smaller monument could have praised a king. But Angkor Wat does something more ambitious. It gathers earth, water, sky, myth, geometry, labor, and royal identity into one enormous statement. The temple is usually associated with King Surya Varman II, though his life arrives only in fragments. He was a ruler of force and vision, remembered through inscriptions and the architecture that surrounded his reign. He did not leave behind a diary, which is inconvenient, though perhaps merciful. Kings rarely explain themselves honestly in diaries anyway. Still, the stone gives hints. The orientation of Angkor Wat is unusual, facing west rather than east, and that single fact has fed generations of scholarly debate. Some historians connect it with devotion to Vishnu. Others have suggested funerary symbolism, because the West is often associated with the setting sun. There is no final agreement that closes the matter neatly. The debate remains open, quiet, and useful, like a door left slightly ajar. You stand at that doorway now. The causeway stretches across the moat, a long stone path leading toward the outer gate. Imagine walking it in the half-light, with water on both sides and the temple growing larger with each slow step. The stones are damp from night air. The edges are worn by centuries you have not yet reached. The surface under your bare feet feels cool, then warm as dawn touches it. Lotus flowers drift near the banks. Birds move in sudden bursts above the reeds. A faint bell or wooden clapper sounds somewhere inside the enclosure, then fades. The world becomes attentive. Angkor Wat does not reveal itself quickly. It unfolds by distance, frame, and threshold. You pass one boundary, then another. Each wall hides and reveals. Each gateway narrows the body, then releases it into a wider space. The builders understand something about suspense. They know that awe grows stronger when it is delayed. This is not only architecture, it is choreography. Your mind drifts to the workers who arrive before sunrise. Some come from nearby settlements. Others may have traveled from farther provinces of the kingdom. They carry tools, offerings, food, ropes, and instructions. They know which stones must be lifted. They know which sections require carving. They know where the overseers stand. They know the heat will become harsh by midday. Yet in the cool morning, there is a strange gentleness. The temple seems almost unfinished in the mist, as though still deciding whether to belong to earth or sky. Its towers rise like mountain peaks seen through dream water. The moat reflects them imperfectly, trembling whenever a fish breaks the surface. That reflection matters. It doubles the temple. It makes stone appear fluid, and heaven appear reachable. A quirky old tidbit lingers around great monuments like this. Later, local stories sometimes imagined that buildings of such scale must have been made by divine beings, giants, or spirits moving through the night. You can understand the impulse. When human labor becomes too vast to picture, myth steps in with larger hands. But the hidden truth is stranger than giants. People built it. Hands built it. Backs bent under it. Eyes measured it. Voices argued over it. Someone misplaced a tool. Someone complained about breakfast. Someone looked up at the growing towers and wondered whether their own grandchildren would believe human beings had done this. That thought is more unsettling than legend, because if people built Angkor Wat, then human ambition is larger, slower, and more mysterious than we usually admit. Not loud ambition, not the thin kind that wants applause by sunset. This is ambition measured in quarries, canals, calculations, seasons, and bodies moving together across years. In the first light of 1100, you begin to sense the scale of what is happening. A king seeks immortality. Priests seek order. Engineers seek stability. Workers seek wages, duty, food, favor, survival, perhaps pride. The gods receive offerings, but so does the future. And the future is greedy. It takes monuments and changes their meaning. It takes sacred places and makes them historical. It takes living cities and turns them into questions. It lets forests cover roads. It lets scholars argue over inscriptions. It lets visitors stand in silence, centuries later, asking how much was faith, how much was politics, and how much was something deeper. Perhaps Angkor Wat is not a single answer. Perhaps it is a mirror built in stone. You look across the moat again, and the towers sharpen in the rising light. The air warms. The insects grow louder. A thin veil of mist lifts from the water. Somewhere inside the walls, a priest prepares an offering, somewhere outside. A laborer rubs sleep from his eyes and lifts a basket. The temple waits for both of them. It waits for the king and for the cook and for the child watching from the palms. It waits for worshippers, soldiers, monks, travelers, scholars, and strangers with cameras not yet invented. It waits because stone can be patient in ways flesh cannot. And as you take one slow step onto the causeway, you feel the first secret of Angkor Wat settle around you. The largest temple is not only large because of its measurements, it is large because it gathers human life into a sacred shape, then leaves that shape standing long after the voices have faded. It is large because it asks the quiet question every great ruin asks in the end. What were they trying to hold in place? You move into the age of Surya Varman II, where kingship is not merely a crown, but a pressure placed upon the body of a man. The king stands at the meeting point of armies, priests, ancestors, land, and heaven. He is expected to command men, feed temples, conquer rivals, calm the gods, and look serene while doing all of it. A modest job, really, only an empire at stake, a cosmic order to maintain, and no polite option for failure. The morning air thickens with heat as the royal world forms around him. You hear sandals brushing stone. You smell oil, incense, wet timber, and the faint sweetness of flowers placed before images of the divine. In the palace zone beyond the temple, officials move between wooden halls and raised platforms. Much of the royal city is built from perishable materials, wood, thatch, fiber, and woven screens. Stone is reserved for the sacred. The gods receive the material that survives. This is why the temple remains while the palace fades. That fact feels almost rude. The king who ordered such grandeur likely slept inside structures that time would easily devour. while the divine house of stone endured for centuries. Archaeologists from leading research groups, including scholars connected with the University of Sydney and American teams studying Angkorian settlement patterns, have shown that the elite and common worlds around the monuments were extensive, complex, and often built from materials that vanish in tropical climates. The absence of walls does not mean the absence of life. You begin to picture the king not as a statue, but as a political creature breathing in a dangerous century. Surya Varman II came to power in a kingdom where succession was not always gentle. Inscriptions suggest struggle, legitimacy, military strength, and sacred sanction mattered deeply. A ruler did not simply inherit stability. He had to make people believe stability had chosen him. That is where temples become useful. A temple can pray, but it can also persuade. It tells nobles that power has divine approval. It tells priests that the ruler honors cosmic order. It tells distant provinces that the center still commands wealth and labor. It tells enemies that the kingdom has enough confidence to spend years building a mountain in stone. And it tells the king something too. Perhaps it whispers that his name can outlast breath. Surya Varman II is often linked with devotion to Vishnu, a major god associated with preservation and cosmic order. This connection appears in inscriptions and in the temple's imagery, though scholars continue to examine how royal devotion, state ritual, and political messaging work together. Some historians argue that Angkor Wat was mainly a state temple honoring a living king's divine patron. Others consider whether its westward orientation and certain symbolic features hint at funerary intentions. The question remains alive among specialists, because Angkor Wat resists being reduced to one purpose. You stand in that uncertainty, and it is not uncomfortable. It is spacious. The royal court understands that meaning can have layers. A king can build for a god, for an empire, for his ancestors, for his future death, and for the living subjects who must see him as more than a man. The temple can be a sanctuary, a political statement, a cosmic diagram, and a memorial, all without apologizing for the overlap. Ancient worlds often handle complexity better than modern arguments do. In the heat, the king's procession begins to form. Servants carry parasols, guards hold spears, priests chant in steady rhythms, officials stand in careful order. Because rank is a language spoken through distance, a person's place beside the king reveals more than a speech could. Those nearest to him glow with borrowed importance. Those farther away feel the exact measurement of their own limits. You can almost hear the fabric move. The king appears beneath shade, not hurried, never openly uncertain. Royal movement must seem controlled. The body becomes theater. He cannot scratch, stumble, squint too much, or look bored during ceremony. Though one suspects every king in history has occasionally wished ceremonies were shorter, the court watches him approach the sacred works. The temple rising before him is not finished in one gesture. It is a process, a long unfolding of orders, measurements, offerings, and revisions. Master builders must interpret a royal vision into geometry. Priests must ensure the structure aligns with sacred principles. Officials must collect supplies and command labor. Artisans must translate myths into lines cut by hand. A ruler may command a monument, but command alone cannot build it. That is one quiet truth beneath royal grandeur. The king depends on thousands of people whose names do not survive, He depends on stonecutters who understand weight, engineers who understand water, scribes who understand accounting, and ritual experts who understand invisible danger. If the foundation fails, theology will not repair it. If supplies fail, praise songs will not lift stone. If provincial loyalty fails, the temple becomes an accusation. Power is never as solitary as it pretends. The inscriptions of the Khmer world often praise kings in elevated language, surrounding them with victory, virtue, and divine favor. Records confirm that such texts were formal instruments of memory, designed to establish legitimacy and preserve gifts, duties, and sacred claims. Historians from institutions such as Oxford and the School of Oriental and African Studies have long treated these inscriptions not as simple biographies, but as crafted political and religious documents. That matters because the king you encounter is partly real and partly constructed. He is flesh, but also image. The flesh worries. The image does not. The flesh ages. The image remains carved, polished, repeated, and protected by ritual. Angkor Wat belongs to that second body, the royal body made of stone and story. It offers Suryavarman a form of presence that can survive the weakness of bones. Yet the human king still wakes each day in weather. He feels heat. He hears complaints. He receives reports from borders. He learns which nobles remain loyal and which ones smile too carefully. He asks about supplies. He listens to priests speak of omens. He may ride out past canals and villages, seeing the land that feeds his ambition. Everywhere, rice grows or fails, everywhere. People measure royal greatness by whether the world remains livable. In this way, the temple is tied to the stomach. No rice, no empire, no surplus, no sacred mountain, no labor force, no galleries of gods. The grandest theology still rests on harvests, irrigation, transport, and human endurance. This is one reason Angkor's monuments feel so profound. They show imagination made possible by agriculture. They show myth standing on mud. A fringe tale sometimes attached to Suryavarman's age imagines that the king received secret guidance from celestial beings. Because ordinary planning seemed too small for such a precise monument. The story has no firm historical foundation, but it reveals something interesting about later wonder. People often explain extreme human achievement by removing humans from it. You do not need to do that here. The truth is more elegant. A ruler with immense authority, a priesthood with sacred knowledge, and a kingdom with disciplined labor could create something that feels beyond ordinary capacity, not beyond humanity, beyond the usual laziness with which humanity explains itself. For a moment, you imagine Suryavarman looking toward the rising towers. Perhaps he sees Vishnu's cosmic order. Perhaps he sees his own name crossing time. Perhaps he sees rival kings, defeated and diminished by the scale of his devotion. Perhaps he sees nothing so poetic, only accounts, deadlines, ceremonies, and stone dust. Still, the monument grows. It grows because kingship in Angkor is not only rule over people, it is rule expressed through landscape. The king reshapes the earth so that the kingdom can recognize him. He orders water, stone, roads, fields, and ritual into a visible argument. The argument says that power is blessed when it creates order. It also says, less gently, that order requires obedience. That is the unsettling part. Beauty and authority are intertwined here. The same temple that lifts the spirit also reveals the reach of royal command. The same carvings that soothe the eye were made through organized labor. The same sacred geometry that invites meditation also announces hierarchy. Angkor Wat is calm, but not innocent. You feel that as the day brightens. The king disappears behind attendants, priests, shade, and ceremony. His personal thoughts are lost. His political world remains visible in stone. The towers, galleries, and causeways continue to gather meaning around his reign, even as the man himself becomes harder to see. Perhaps that was always the point. A king cannot remain alive forever, but a temple can keep performing kingship long after the body is gone. It can keep saying, Bah, without voice, that a ruler once stood close to heaven. It can keep turning ambition into reverence and command into memory. And somewhere in the courtly silence, beneath incense and heat, you sense the second secret of Angkor Wat. The temple was not only built by a king, it was built to make kingship seem eternal. Your path now turns away from royal ceremony and toward water, where Angkor's hidden intelligence lies, spread across the plain. The temple may command the eye, but the city's deeper power moves through channels, ponds, embankments, moats, and reservoirs. In this low country, water is never just scenery. It is memory, danger, food, blessing, and threat, all wearing the same shining face. You hear it everywhere, a soft slap against stone, a frog calling from reeds, a wooden pole dipping from a boat, the faint rush of water passing through a narrow gate, guided by human hands and ancient calculation. The air smells green and damp, with the heavy sweetness of flooded grass rising beneath the morning heat. Angkor breathes through water. Modern archaeological research, including laser mapping and fieldwork by international teams from universities in the United States, Australia, and Europe, has confirmed that Angkor was surrounded by an immense engineered landscape, canals, reservoirs, roads, occupation mounds, and hydraulic features formed a network far larger than early visitors could easily imagine. The largest temples were only the visible peaks of a much wider human arrangement. You stand on the edge of a canal and watch the city reveal itself differently. Not as a pile of ruins, not as a lonely wonder. It becomes a living machine. Though not a machine of iron and smoke, it is a machine of earth, water, labor, rice, ritual, and timing. During the rainy season, the skies open with a force that feels almost personal. Water falls in sheets, hammering leaves, filling ditches, swelling ponds, and turning paths into dark ribbons of mud. During the dry months, the same land can crack, harden, and wait under a white sky. The Khmer world learns to live between these extremes. Too much water, and villages drown. Too little, and fields fail. The genius of Angkor is not that it conquers nature completely, because no civilization ever does. The genius is that it negotiates with nature at a scale that feels almost imperial. Reservoirs hold monsoon water. Channels move it across the plain. Embankments lift roads above seasonal floods. Moats protect, reflect, cool, define, and sanctify. Angkor Wat's moat is more than an elegant frame around sacred architecture. It marks a boundary between ordinary land and consecrated space. It also stabilizes the ground around the monument, helping manage water in a region where soil and season can be difficult companions. Engineers and archaeologists continue to debate the exact balance between symbolic, practical, and hydrological roles in such features, and that debate remains richly alive. That uncertainty is useful. It prevents the temple from becoming too simple. The moat may represent the cosmic ocean surrounding the sacred mountain. It may help drain, store, and manage water. It may announce royal wealth and control. It may cool the air slightly around the enclosure. It may do several of these things at once, because practical minds and sacred minds were not enemies here. You look across the water and feel the stillness working on you. The surface reflects the towers, but it also hides silt, fish, roots, and slow currents. Dragonflies hover in sudden sparks of color. A boy crouches near the bank, watching for movement below the surface. His mother calls him away, perhaps because children near deep water have always made adults nervous. Some things never change. Beyond the moat, the wider city spreads outward in patterns too vast to sense from a single path. Raised house mounds stand near ponds. Tracks connect neighborhoods to fields. Small shrines appear beneath trees. Workshops smoke. Dogs sleep in shade. The sacred capital is also a place of laundry, gossip, hunger, laughter, and people pretending they are not listening. A city is never only its monuments. Research from institutions such as the University of Illinois and the University of Sydney has helped show how Angkor's settlement pattern included a low-density urban landscape. This means people lived across broad areas rather than inside one compact stone city. From above, the pattern appears almost woven, with habitation, waterworks, fields, and sacred structures interlaced across the floodplain. From the ground, it feels quieter. You walk beside a narrow channel where water glides between earthen banks. The bank is warm under your palm. Grass cuts lightly against your ankles. Somewhere nearby, a woman rinses a clay pot. A man repairs a fish trap with quick, practiced fingers. Their lives depend on systems ordered by kings, but also on thousands of small acts no inscription bothers to praise. The system must be maintained constantly. Silt gathers, banks erode, gates jam, channels clog with plants. A reservoir that looks serene from a distance requires clearing, measuring, repairing, and watching. Water management is not a single triumph. It is a habit repeated through generations. Perhaps that is why great hydraulic systems feel almost moral. They reward attention and punish arrogance. The city listens to the seasons. When rains arrive, people read the color of clouds and the smell of wind. They hear thunder beyond the horizon and know work must change. Boats become more useful. Paths vanish. Fish move differently. Rice seedlings wait for the right depth. Priests perform rites, but farmers also perform their own older wisdom, placing feet in mud and judging what no royal decree can fully command. A quirky local tradition whispers through later memory that spirits lived in ponds, canals, and old reservoirs, guarding places where water gathered strangely. Such tales may not be archaeology, but they preserve an emotional truth. Water that feeds you can also take you. It deserves respect, and perhaps a little nervous politeness. You pause beside a reservoir so broad that the far side blurs in heat. The surface is not dramatic. It is calm, almost sleepy. Yet that calmness is power. Stored water means the kingdom can endure dry months. It means rice fields can be extended. It means workers can be fed while stone is cut, moved, lifted, and carved. It means temples can receive offerings because villages have produced surplus. Sacred grandeur begins as wet earth under the feet of farmers. This is where Angkor's hidden timeline deepens. Long before a visitor admires a tower, someone must understand rainfall. Long before a gallery is carved, someone must plan a canal. Long before a king speaks of heaven, someone must keep embankments from failing. Civilization arrives not only with writing and monuments, but with maintenance. That word sounds plain, yet it is beautiful. Maintenance is what keeps the sacred visible. It is the quiet agreement between generations that the work will not be allowed to collapse. In Angkor, maintenance means clearing channels beneath a punishing sun. It means repairing wooden gates after floods. It means measuring water levels and arguing over who receives irrigation first. No one carves those arguments into glorious reliefs, though perhaps they should have. You continue through the humid afternoon, and the city becomes less mysterious in one way, more mysterious in another. Less mysterious because the practical foundations of greatness appear around you. More mysterious because the scale of cooperation becomes harder to comprehend. How many hands does it take to guide a landscape? How many seasons must be remembered before water obeys even briefly? The answer does not arrive neatly. It moves in the canals, slips through rice fields, gleams in the moat, and settles beneath the towers. Angkor Wat rises because stone was mastered. Yes, but also because water was studied, feared, honored, and organized. As sunset gathers over the reservoirs, the sky turns copper and violet. Smoke from evening fires drifts low over the fields. Frogs begin again in the reeds. The city softens into reflection, half earth and half water, and in that fading light you sense another hidden truth. The temple may be built of stone, but its foundation is liquid. You come now to the temple itself as a mountain, not a mountain of wild cliffs and trees, but a mountain disciplined by geometry. Its towers rise from terraces and galleries with a calm authority, as though the earth has been persuaded to lift itself toward heaven. The air feels hotter near the stone. Sunlight gathers on the steps, and each surface seems to hold the memory of hands, ropes, chisels, and breath. The climb begins quietly. Your palm touches a block of sandstone, rough in some places, softened in others by centuries of weather and passing fingers. The stone is warm, almost living. Above you, the central towers draw the eye upward in stages, never giving the whole mystery away at once. You do not rush here. Angkor Wat does not reward rushing. It teaches the body to slow down, to notice height, shadow, angle, and threshold. The temple is shaped as a sacred mountain, a stone version of the cosmic center known in ancient Indian traditions as Mount Meru. In Khmer royal religion, such symbolism helped connect king, god, and universe into a single architectural idea. Scholars from institutions such as Oxford, Yale, and the University of Chicago have long examined how South and Southeast Asian ideas of cosmic geography were translated into Khmer temple plans, sculpture, and ritual space. You feel that translation beneath your feet. A mountain is not merely copied, it is reimagined. The builders create height where the plain is flat. They create sacred ascent where the land spreads outward in fields and water. They create centrality in a vast world of villages, canals, roads, and forests. The temple tells the body a story. The farther inward you walk, the closer you come to the center of existence. That story is powerful because it is physical. You pass through galleries where shade settles like cool cloth. Then you step into sunlight, so bright it makes the stone flash pale gold. The movement between darkness and brightness is deliberate. Enclosure, release, enclosure, release. The temple changes your pace and narrows your attention, as any good ritual space should. The steps become steeper as you approach the higher levels. They are not friendly stairs. They almost seem to ask whether you are serious. Your knees notice. Your hands become useful. The ascent requires care, and care produces humility. Modern visitors sometimes treat steep ancient stairways as an architectural inconvenience, but they can also be read as spiritual instruction. The sacred center is not casually entered. Even the body must confess effort. A priest climbing these levels would feel the same strain in his legs. A royal figure would feel it too, though surrounded by attendants and ceremony. Stone does not completely flatter power. It makes even kings move carefully. There is a small comfort in that thought, perhaps even a sleepy little justice. At each level, the world below changes. The outer enclosure becomes a frame. The moat becomes a band of still water. The surrounding land stretches outward with palms, smoke, fields, and roofs. The higher you rise, the more the human world flattens into pattern. From above, daily life appears ordered, almost peaceful. From within it, of course, people are still losing tools, burning rice, arguing with neighbors, and wondering why important men speak so slowly. The mountain transforms confusion into design. That may be one reason sacred architecture reaches upward. Height simplifies. Height gives distance. Height allows rulers and priests to imagine a world more orderly than the one lived at ground level. Angkor Wat's terraces perform this transformation with unusual grace. They do not erase the human world. They place it beneath a cosmic map. Records from Angkorian inscriptions confirm that Khmer kings gave land, labor, precious objects, and ritual responsibilities to temples. These offerings were not only devotional, they bound social and economic life to sacred centers. The Temple Mountain was therefore both symbol and institution, a vision of the universe supported by real villages, real harvests, and real obligations. This is where the beauty deepens. The mountain is sacred, yet administrative. It is heavenly, yet practical. A single shrine might need flowers, lamps, food, guardians, musicians, cleaners, scribes, cooks, and specialists who understand ritual calendars. A temple of this scale needs far more. Its cosmic order depends on schedules. The gods, it turns out, appreciate organization. You enter a corridor where the air cools suddenly. The stone walls hold the day's heat more gently here. Your footsteps soften. Outside, a bird calls sharply. Then silence folds back over the passage. The ceiling seems low after the brightness of the courtyard, and the movement inward becomes intimate. The mountain is not only upward, it is inward too. At Angkor Wat, the central sanctuary draws the visitor toward a hidden core. The towers above may be visible from afar, but the sacred center itself is approached through layered spaces. This is architecture as revelation. Not everything is shown immediately. Important things wait behind walls. Scholars continue to debate how much of Angkor Wat's design reflects a precise ritual map, how much reflects royal display, and how much comes from architectural tradition refined over centuries. The strongest interpretations often avoid choosing only one answer. The temple works because symbolism, ceremony, engineering, and politics are braided together. Pull one strand too hard, and the whole picture becomes less convincing. A small fringe idea sometimes appears in popular imagination, claiming that the towers encode secret energy patterns or lost technologies. Evidence does not support those claims, but the fascination is understandable. Angkor Wat feels so ordered, so measured, and so otherworldly that people sometimes reach for hidden machinery. Yet the more moving possibility is simpler. Human beings using mathematics, devotion, hierarchy, and patience made stone feel alive. The towers themselves resemble lotus buds, tapering upward with layered forms that soften their mass. They are heavy, but they do not feel blunt. Their silhouettes lift like prayer made solid. When clouds pass behind them, the stone seems to move without moving. Light catches the edges differently every hour, turning the mountain into a slow instrument for measuring the day. You stand beneath one of the towers and look up. The sky is small there, framed by stone. The blue above feels distant and chosen. This is one of architecture's quiet tricks. It can make the ordinary sky feel sacred simply by limiting how you see it. The builders do not create the heavens. They frame them, and suddenly heaven seems to answer. Around you, carved surfaces begin to gather meaning. Figures emerge from walls, divine bodies, celestial dancers, guardians, patterns, and mythic scenes cover the stone with disciplined abundance. The mountain is not bare. It is populated. Its slopes hold stories, powers, and presences. The sacred center is crowded with memory. Yet there is still silence, a thick silence, not absence, but concentration. The temple holds sound differently at each level. A voice in one gallery becomes a low murmur. A footstep in another seems to travel along the wall. Wind passes through openings with a dry breath. Even silence here feels constructed. As the sun lowers, shadows lengthen across the terraces. The steep stairways darken first, then the corners of galleries, then the faces of carvings. The towers remain bright a little longer, catching light after the lower world has begun to dim. It is easy to imagine this as intentional, even when the sun simply does what the sun has always done. Still, symbolism lives in such moments. The upper stone holds day while the ground enters evening. The sacred peak glows while human paths fall into shade. The mountain teaches without speech, and the lesson is calm but firm. There is an order above the disorder. There is a center beyond the scattered edges. There is a height toward which earthly power wishes to climb. You rest your hand once more on the warm sandstone. Beneath its surface lies quarry dust, river labor, royal command, sacred imagination, and the difficult mathematics of balance. Nothing about this mountain is natural, yet it feels as though it has always been waiting in the plain. Perhaps that is the secret of sacred architecture. It makes invention look eternal, and as twilight gathers around the lotus towers, you sense that Angkor Wat is not merely pointing toward heaven. It is asking earth to behave as if heaven has already touched it. You descend from the sacred heights into the world of labor, where the temple becomes less like a miracle and more like 1,000 ordinary mornings joined together. The air is already warm, and the day has barely opened. Roosters call from raised houses, Smoke slips through palm leaves. Somewhere, someone coughs awake, annoyed that history requires so much effort before breakfast. This is where Angkor Wat becomes human, not smaller. More astonishing. You hear the dull knock of wood against wood, the scrape of baskets, the grunt of men lifting weight together. You hear oxen breathing heavily as they pull loaded carts along prepared tracks. Women carry food toward work areas, wrapped in leaves or stored in clay vessels. Children trail beside adults until someone sends them away, which they ignore for exactly as long as children always have. The temple depends on this entire moving world. Builders do not appear from nowhere with heroic jawlines and perfect timing. They arrive hungry, sleepy, skilled, irritated, proud, and cautious. Some understand stone, some understand rope, some understand animals, some understand cooking for hundreds of people without starting a small domestic rebellion. Every task matters, because large projects collapse when small tasks fail. The largest monument begins with routine. Archaeological research from major universities and field teams confirms that Angkorian construction required an organized labor force, specialized craft workers, transport systems, food supply, and administrative oversight. The Khmer Kingdom did not simply gather a crowd and hope enthusiasm would solve geometry. It relied on hierarchy, planning, materials, seasonal timing, and the repeated discipline of work. A stone block waits near the edge of a work area. It is not romantic yet. It is heavy, squared, stubborn, and indifferent to royal ambition. Men gather around it with poles and rope. Their foreman gives instructions. The rope tightens, feet press into dirt, shoulders lean. Someone counts the pull in a steady voice. The block shifts slightly, then more fully, groaning over rollers or packed ground. No divine hand lifts it. That is the wonder. Human bodies coordinate with tools, animals, and patience. A single stone moving a little closer to its place becomes a victory too small for inscriptions and too important to ignore. The workers know this. They know progress by inches, by blisters, by the changing shadow of a wall at midday. You pass a group of quarrymen shaping stone with iron tools. Their arms rise and fall in rhythm. Chips scatter across the ground. Dust clings to sweat on their skin. The sound is sharp, dry, and persistent, like hard rain falling sideways. Nearby, a more experienced mason runs his hand along an edge, feeling what the eye might miss. Skill lives in the fingertips. A young apprentice watches him closely, pretending not to look too eager. He may spend years learning how stone behaves, where it splits, how it resists, how it accepts detail. He learns that force is useful only when guided by judgment. Strike too lightly, and nothing changes. Strike too hard, and the stone remembers your stupidity forever. There is gentle comedy in ancient work. Someone drops a tool, someone swears under his breath, perhaps very creatively, though we shall keep the evening calm. Someone else laughs because the dropped tool narrowly missed a foot. A cook complains that builders eat as though they are hollow inside. An overseer complains that cooks complain too much. The temple rises amid sacred purpose and ordinary irritation. That mixture makes it real. Records from Angkorian inscriptions mention temple personnel, donated lands, workers, servants, dancers, priests, and officials attached to sacred foundations. Such records prove that temples were not only buildings for worship, They were institutions with people, resources, duties, and long chains of obligation. Historians from Yale, Oxford, and other major centers have studied these inscriptions as evidence for the social machinery behind sacred architecture. You stand beside that machinery now. It does not look like machinery, it looks like people. There are elephant drivers guiding animals through mud and shade. The elephants move with immense patience until they decide not to, at which point everyone remembers that patience is not the same as obedience. Their handlers speak to them in low tones, using touch, sound, and long familiarity. A great animal can pull weight that men cannot, but even strength must be negotiated. Nearby, carpenters prepare temporary structures, ramps, supports, and scaffolds. Much of the work that makes stone architecture possible is made from wood that will vanish. This is one of history's quiet unfairnesses. The permanent monument receives admiration, while the temporary structures that helped create it disappear without applause. Still, their absence is not emptiness. You can infer them from necessity. The stones must be lifted, workers must reach high surfaces, tools must be stored, shade must be built, food must be prepared, injuries must be treated, water must be carried. The sacred mountain depends on temporary worlds, raised and removed as construction advances. You smell resin, damp rope, animal hide, sweat, ash, and cooked rice. The sun climbs, heat gathers under cloth and skin. Workers pause beneath palm shade, drinking water from jars. Conversation loosens. Someone tells a story about a spirit seen near a quarry pool. Someone else claims the spirit was probably a drunk cousin returning late, which is less impressive but more likely. A quirky fringe belief sometimes appears in later tales around Angkor, suggesting that supernatural helpers built parts of the temple overnight. The idea is charming, but the stones disagree. Tool marks, construction joints, unfinished carvings, and logistical traces point towards sustained human work. The real enchantment is not instant creation. It is coordination lasting long enough to look impossible. You move toward a carving workshop where artisans sit near prepared stone surfaces. Their work is different from hauling and lifting, but not easier. A rough wall becomes a field of forms under patient hands. Guidelines are marked, shapes emerge. A curve becomes a shoulder. A shallow cut becomes jewelry. A blank face becomes a divine presence. Though only after many careful hours, the carver must serve tradition and imagination together. Too much freedom. And the sacred image loses its proper language. Too little, and the wall becomes lifeless repetition. The best artisans move inside rules, as fish move inside water. They make discipline appear graceful. Scholars continue to debate how work crews were organized in detail, how labor obligations were distributed, and how much was commanded through state service, temple duty, local administration, or specialized employment. The broad picture is clear, but the daily human arrangements remain partly hidden. That hiddenness is not a failure. It is a reminder that most lives leave traces softer than stone. You look at a worker's hand, the nails are broken, the skin is lined. Dust rests in every crease. This hand will not be named in royal praise. It will not appear as a hero in an inscription. Yet without such hands, the king's vision remains only an expensive thought. The temple is full of unnamed authors. Every level contains them. The person who mixed mortar where needed, the person who sharpened tools, the person who led oxen to water, the person who cooked rice before dawn, the person who carried messages between overseers, the person who cleaned debris from a passage so someone more important could walk through it solemnly and pretend the world arranged itself. This is not cynicism. It is gratitude. Great monuments often invite us to look upward, toward rulers and gods. Angkor Wat also asks us to look sideways, toward the workers standing in heat, doing difficult tasks carefully because someone must. Their lives are not footnotes to the temple. Their lives are the substance from which the temple is made. Evening approaches and the work slows. Tools are gathered. Animals are led away. Dust settles in the last amber light. The unfinished stone glows softly, and for a brief moment every block seems to hold the day inside it. You hear tired voices returning toward houses. You hear laughter. You hear silence following labor, the kind of silence that enters the bones before sleep. The temple remains behind them, slightly taller than it was at dawn, not complete, not yet perfect, but changed. And that is how the impossible appears, not in one thunderous act, in repeated effort, measured across seasons, carried by bodies that history almost forgets. The largest temple ever built by humans is not only a statement of kingship or devotion, it is the memory of labor made visible, one stone at a time. You follow the stone away from the temple, back toward the hills, where its journey begins in silence. Before a tower rises, before a corridor darkens, before a divine face appears beneath a chisel, there is only raw sandstone waiting inside the earth. The sacred monument begins as a sleeping layer in distant ground, pressed by time, weather, and weight. The hills lie beyond the busy heart of Angkor. They do not announce themselves dramatically. There is forest here, thick with damp leaves, roots, birds, insects, and the low green smell of shade. The air is cooler beneath the trees, though only a little. Sunlight falls through the canopy in broken pieces. A cicada calls with such confidence that one suspects it believes itself important to royal construction. Then the quarry appears. It is not a grand entrance into legend. It is a wound in the hillside, made by tools and intention. Blocks are marked, loosened, cut, and shaped enough for transport. Dust gathers on leaves near the working face. Men stand with iron implements, wooden wedges, ropes, baskets, and the old patience of people facing stone. Research by archaeologists and geologists has connected much of Angkor Wat's sandstone to quarries in the Kulin Hills region, carried across a considerable distance to the temple plain. Studies by international teams, including scholars working with American and Japanese institutions, have examined tool marks, canals, roots, and stone composition to understand this movement. The conclusion is steady and remarkable. Angkor Wat's stones traveled through an organized transport system of impressive scale. You stand beside a half-cut block and imagine its future. It will leave this hill. It will cross water and land. It will become part of a wall, a stair, a tower, a lintel, or perhaps a hidden inner mass no visitor will admire directly. Some stones are destined for glory. Others are destined to hold up glory from within. History can be unfair even to geology. The quarrymen know the stone by sound. They tap, listen, and judge. A bad fracture can ruin days of work. A hidden weakness can betray a builder later. The men must understand where the stone will split, how it will bear weight, and how much shaping should happen before transport. Too much shaping wastes effort if the block breaks on the road. Too little makes movement harder than necessary. Every choice carries weight, literally. In this case, you watch wedges driven into prepared grooves. The rhythm is controlled, not wild. Blow follows blow. The hillside answers with dull resistance, then a subtle shift. A line opens. The stone begins to separate from its bed. No one cheers. They have work to do. And besides, dramatic cheering near heavy stone is the sort of thing that leads to crushed toes. The block is freed. Now the more dangerous problem begins. A stone lying in a quarry is an achievement. A stone arriving intact at Angkor is another kind of achievement entirely. The distance between those two facts is filled with slopes, mud, rivers, canals, rafts, animals, human judgment, and a long list of ways things can go wrong. The transport likely used a combination of routes, including waterways that allowed heavy blocks to move more efficiently than dragging them overland. Scholars continue to debate the exact paths, methods, and seasonal timing of this movement. Some evidence points toward canal networks linking quarry zones to the Angkor Plain, while other interpretations consider mixed routes and changing logistical choices. The debate remains open because ancient transport often leaves partial traces, not a complete instruction manual. That is part of the fascination. The stones are present, but their journey is ghostly. You can almost see them moving, though no single account describes every stage. Men lever the block onto a prepared platform. Ropes tighten, oxen pull. Elephants may help when the terrain permits. Logs, sledges, packed earth, and human coordination turn immovable weight into slow motion. The block creeps forward, stubbornly obedient. The path down from the hill smells of crushed vegetation and hot wood. Workers call to one another. A rope creaks under strain. Mud sucks at feet after rain. In the dry season, dust rises and settles on skin, hair, and tongue. Each season offers its own inconvenience, because the ancient world is generous that way. At the water, the stone changes its relationship with gravity. A raft waits, built strong enough to carry the block without surrendering to embarrassment. Men guide the stone onto it carefully. Balance matters. One careless shift can sink effort, cargo, and pride together. The river or canal becomes a road, wide and shining, carrying the monument before the monument exists. Water makes empire possible again. You imagine the raft drifting through a green corridor. Trees lean over the banks. Birds lift from reeds. Children run along the edge to watch the great stone pass. A fisherman pauses with his net lowered. The block moves slowly, almost solemnly, as though already aware that it belongs to a sacred future. Of course, it is still just stone. That is the strange thing. Meaning arrives gradually. At the quarry, it is material. On the raft, it is cargo. At the work site, it is potential. In the wall, it becomes architecture. Beneath carving, it becomes story. Within ritual, it becomes presence. The same block changes identity without changing substance. This is how sacred places are made. Matter is moved, named, shaped, and believed into another state. A fringe tradition sometimes imagines that the stones of great temples were moved by chance, levitation, or lost powers known only to vanished masters. Such tales drift around many ancient monuments, from Egypt to Cambodia, because heavy stone offends the modern imagination. It seems unreasonable that people without engines could move so much. Yet the evidence points not to magic, but to logistics. And logistics is its own quieter sorcery. Think of the required coordination. The quarry must produce blocks at the right pace. Transport crews must be ready. Water levels must permit movement. Work sites must receive, sort, and place materials. Roads and channels must remain usable. Officials must record deliveries. Food must follow workers. Tools must be repaired. Accidents must be absorbed without stopping the entire system. One stone is simple. Millions of stones become government. You pass a staging area near the temple plain where blocks wait in rows. Some are marked, some are rough, some have begun to receive finer surfaces. They resemble sleeping animals in the heat. A mason checks one edge and shakes his head. Another worker laughs softly, perhaps because the stone has displeased someone important without even trying. There is personality in material. A good stone is praised. A troublesome stone is cursed. A broken stone becomes a lesson. The workers may not speak of geology in formal terms, but they know practical truth through repeated contact. They understand density, grain, fracture, weathering, and balance with their hands, backs, and eyes. Modern research confirms that Angkorian builders used sandstone extensively for visible sacred architecture, while laterite and other materials were also used in structural contexts. The choice of stone shaped the temple's appearance and durability. Sandstone allowed delicate carving, smooth surfaces, and refined detail, making it essential for the visual language of Angkor Wat. You kneel beside a fresh block and touch its surface. It feels grainy, warm, and faintly damp in shaded places. Inside it lies the possibility of a god's arm, a soldier's shield, a dancer's smile, a border pattern, or a quiet stretch of wall that no one notices while passing. The block doesn't yet know its fate. Humans must decide for it. There is something tender in that, also slightly alarming, because the stone will outlive the people deciding. Their choices will remain long after their names vanish. A carving line placed in one afternoon may be studied for centuries. A fitting error hidden deep in a wall may sleep forever. A block set perfectly may hold its place through storms, vines, pilgrims, wars, and the idle fingers of tourists who are told not to touch things and do anyway. The sun lowers over the transport yard. Shadows lengthen between waiting stones. Workers wash dust from their arms. A raft is tied along the bank. An elephant flaps its ears in the fighting heat, unimpressed by human ambition as only elephants can be. The stones have crossed from hill to plain. Their silence has changed. They are no longer part of the earth where they formed, and not yet part of the temple where they will endure. They occupy the strange middle state of all great transformations, removed from origin, not yet given final meaning. And in that waiting, you sense another secret of Angkor Wat. The temple did not rise only where it stands. It began far away, in hills, rivers, roots, and hands, traveling piece by piece toward a shape no single stone could understand. You enter the long galleries where the temple begins to speak in pictures. The stone walls stretch beside you like an endless memory, crowded with gods, kings, soldiers, animals, demons, dancers, chariots, and waves of carved movement. Outside, the heat presses heavily on the courtyards. Inside, the light grows dimmer, sliding across the reliefs in thin bands of gold and shadow. The walls do not shout, they murmur. Your eyes need time to adjust. At first, the carvings appear as texture, a rippling surface of bodies and ornament. Then single figures begin to separate from the mass. A warrior lifts his weapon. A horse leans forward. A face turns with calm, unreadable confidence. A hand pulls a bowstring. A line of soldiers advances forever, never tiring, never arriving. This is history and myth woven together in stone. The bas-reliefs of Angkor Wat are among the most extensive sculptural programs of the medieval world. Art historians from major institutions, including scholars at Yale, Harvard, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, have studied these galleries as visual texts of royal authority, religious imagination, and Khmer artistic mastery. Their work confirms that the carvings are not random decoration. They are organized stories placed with intention, rhythm, and political meaning. You walk beside an army that never stops marching. The figures are carved in profile, layered in rows, holding shields, spears, bows, banners, and parasols. Some scenes appear to show historical military processions connected with royal power. Others belong to sacred epics and cosmic conflict. In the dimness, the difference between human war and divine war begins to blur, which may be exactly the point. A king wants his battles to resemble the battles of gods. Naturally, this is convenient for kings. The viewer is invited to see earthly victory as part of a larger cosmic pattern. Soldiers are not merely soldiers. They become participants in order against disorder, loyalty against chaos, center against enemy. The carving does what royal art often does. It arranges violence into meaning and meaning into obedience. Yet the beauty is undeniable. The lines are controlled and elegant. The bodies move in disciplined rhythm. Even crowded battle scenes possess an almost musical order. You can sense the carver's hand guiding each curve, deciding where tension should gather and where the eye should rest. The wall becomes a slow procession, and you become part of it simply by walking. In another gallery, the mythic ocean is churned. A long serpent stretches across the scene, held by opposing forces pulling with tremendous effort. Gods and demons strain on either side, turning the cosmic ocean to recover treasures and the nectar of immortality. The story comes from ancient Indian tradition, but here it has been transformed by Khmer hands, Khmer stone, and Khmer royal purpose. The scene feels immense. Bodies repeat in steady rhythm, one after another, each gripping the serpent. The repetition could have become dull, but instead it becomes hypnotic. You sense labor, struggle, balance, and desire. Even the universe, the carving suggests, requires coordinated pulling. Creation itself is a difficult group project, which seems painfully believable. Above and around the scene, divine beings hover and observe. The serpent's body undulates across the wall like a living boundary between worlds. The carved ocean is not wet, of course, but your mind supplies the sound of waves, the strain of ropes, the hiss of scales, the exhaustion of arms. A fringe interpretation sometimes claims that such scenes preserve memories of advanced lost technologies or ancient machines hidden inside myth. Scholars do not accept that reading, but the attraction is easy to understand. The image of cosmic churning feels mechanical, rhythmic, almost industrial. Yet its power does not need machinery. It speaks through ritual, myth, and the human memory of effort. You continue into a quieter panel. Here, celestial dancers appear in graceful stillness, adorned with jewelry, elaborate hair, and faint smiles that never fully explain themselves. They are not identical, though at first the eye may think so. Look longer, and differences emerge in posture, ornament, expression, and gesture. The wall becomes populated by presences, each one balanced between person and symbol. Their calm is slightly unsettling. They watch without watching. Researchers have documented thousands of female divine or semi-divine figures across Angkor Wat, and their identities remain discussed among specialists. Some are described as celestial dancers, others as devata, divine female presences associated with sacred space. The precise classification, meaning, and ritual significance of these figures remain debated, especially because they seem both decorative and deeply charged with presence. You stand near one figure whose lips curve almost into a smile. Almost. The expression is not warm, but not cold. It is the expression of someone who knows a secret and has no intention of rushing the explanation. Her stone jewelry catches the angled light. The carving is shallow, yet the presence feels deep. Art can do that. It can make absence feel occupied. The galleries hold more than beauty. They hold an entire way of organizing the world. The sacred epics provide models of duty, loyalty, cosmic conflict, and divine intervention. Royal scenes place Khmer power inside that sacred frame. Punishment scenes and heavenly processions remind viewers that moral order extends beyond death. The temple becomes a visual education for those who can read the language of form. Not everyone reads it equally. A priest sees one layer, a soldier sees another, a noble sees lineage and power, a worker sees craftsmanship, a child sees animals, strange faces, and frightening demons. A modern visitor sees art history, symbolism, and perhaps wonders where the nearest water bottle has gone. Every age brings its own thirst to the wall. The carvings survive because they are stone, but they were never meant to be dead. They were meant to be seen in motion by bodies passing through shadow and light. Oil lamps may have flickered near some spaces, voices may have echoed through the galleries. Ritual movement may have changed how certain images were experienced. A relief is not only an image, it is an encounter staged by architecture. You move closer to a battle scene and notice small details. The curve of an elephant's trunk, the pattern of a shield, the tension in a horse's neck, a soldier's head turned slightly away from the main action. These details carry no grand announcement, yet they make the world breathe. The carvers understood observation. They knew bodies, animals, cloth, weapons, jewelry, and movement. They may have followed sacred models, but they also watched real life. Their divine armies borrow from human armies. Their mythic struggle borrows from human strain. Their immortal figures are carved by mortal workers who knew the weight of tools. There is a tenderness hidden in this discipline. You begin to sense the gallery not as a single message, but as a layered archive. It preserves royal ambition, religious teaching, artistic skill, workshop practice, cultural exchange, and the quiet endurance of stone. It also preserves silence around the people who made it. Their signatures are absent, but their decisions remain everywhere. A line bends here, a face softens there, a pattern repeats with slight variation, as though the hand grew curious within obedience. The reliefs are not mechanical copies, they are human performances held still, The scholarly debate continues around chronology, workshop organization, intended viewing order, and the relationship between specific panels and royal ideology. Some interpretations emphasize devotion, others political symbolism, others artistic tradition. The most convincing view may be that Angkor Wat's galleries do all these things at once, because sacred art rarely stays inside one neat drawer. You reach the end of a panel, and the stone does not conclude so much as pause. Another scene waits beyond the turn. Another army, another god, another dancer, another fragment of a world that refuses to become simple. The air has cooled slightly inside the gallery. Outside, sunlight still burns across the courtyard. You stand between heat and shadow, between myth and record, between story and stone. The carved figures remain beside you, patient as stars, and in their patient silence, another hidden truth appears. Angkor Wat was not built only to be entered. It was built to be read slowly, by eyes moving through darkness, finding history where shadow touches stone. You come to Angkor Wat beneath a paling sky, when night has not fully released the land, and dawn has not yet claimed it. The temple stands as a dark geometry against the east, its towers arranged like a thought too old to hurry. Around you, the air is cool for once. It carries the scent of damp stone, lotus water, crushed grass, and the faint smoke of fires waking beyond the enclosure. The birds begin before the people do. Small calls rise from the trees. The moat lies still, holding the dim outline of the towers on its surface. For a moment, stone and reflection seem equal, as though the temple has a twin beneath the water. Then the sky brightens by one careful shade. The edges sharpen. A cloud turns silver. The world holds its breath with the seriousness that dawn always borrows from religion. This is where Angkor Wat becomes celestial. The temple's west-facing orientation has drawn close attention from scholars, architects, and astronomers. Research by historians of architecture and archaeoastronomers has explored whether the builders designed certain alignments with solar events in mind, especially the dramatic sunrise views seen from specific positions near the western entrance. The idea is not fantasy, but neither is every alignment proof of secret knowledge. The serious question is how far intention can be demonstrated. You stand on the causeway and watch the first light gather. The sun does not appear at once. It sends warning. The sky behind the towers changes from deep blue to gray, then to pearl, then to a pale orange that seems to seep upward through the world. The central towers remain black, becoming more powerful precisely because they are not yet detailed. A crowd is not needed. One quiet witness is enough. As sunrise approaches, the temple acts like an instrument, not because it makes sound, but because it measures light. Corners, openings, towers, and lines of sight begin to matter in a new way. The architecture does not merely occupy space, it organizes the sky into meaningful moments. You are invited to feel that the movement of the sun and the order of the temple belong together. That feeling is powerful. It is also dangerous. Human beings are excellent at seeing patterns, sometimes where ancient builders placed them, sometimes where our own longing places them. Scholars continue to debate which celestial alignments at Angkor Wat were deliberate, which were symbolic in a broader sense, and which are modern interpretations encouraged by the temple's extraordinary symmetry. This debate remains open because architectural intention is difficult to prove when no builder has left a convenient note saying, "Yes, we meant that exact sunrise." Ancient builders, inconsiderately, rarely label their mysteries. Still, the temple's relationship with the sky cannot be dismissed. Its design reflects careful orientation, measured axes, and sacred spatial ideas drawn from religious cosmology. The sun's path, the cardinal directions, and the cycle of time all mattered deeply in temple architecture across South and Southeast Asia. Angkor Wat belongs to that wide world of cosmic planning. You look upward as the first rim of the sun appears. Light touches the towers. The stone changes instantly. What had been black becomes brown, rose and gold. Details wake across the surfaces. Edges glow. Shadows retreat into carvings and doorways. The temple seems less like an object lit by the sun, and more like a form the sun has agreed to reveal. You understand why people gather for this. Even if one strips away every extravagant claim, the event remains moving. Dawn at Angkor Wat feels designed because the temple is designed, and because dawn itself is the oldest theater human beings have ever known. Every morning, the world returns from darkness. Every morning, the eye is vulnerable to meaning. In the early 12th century, the sky is not a distant emptiness. It is a field of powers, cycles, omens, calendars, and sacred order. Priests observe time. Farmers observe seasons. Kings associate rule with cosmic harmony. The movement of celestial bodies is not separate from earthly life. It guides ritual timing, agricultural expectation, and the imagination of royal legitimacy. Records from Khmer inscriptions and comparative temple studies confirm that sacred calendars, ritual cycles, and royal ceremonies were central to Angkorian religious life. Scholars from universities such as Chicago, Cornell, and Hawaii have examined how Indian cosmological ideas were adapted in Cambodia, not as mere copies, but as living frameworks within a Khmer political and ritual world. You can sense that adaptation in the temple's proportions. Some researchers have argued that measurements within Angkor Wat encode calendrical numbers, including cycles connected to ancient cosmology. These interpretations are intriguing, though not all are accepted equally. The more cautious view is that the temple's layout certainly reflects sacred order and may include numerical symbolism. While specific claims require careful evidence, there is wisdom in caution. Mystery does not need exaggeration. A temple aligned with direction, time, and myth is already mysterious enough. It is enough to stand beneath the light and realize that people long ago wanted architecture to converse with the heavens. They wanted stone to become calendar, map, offering, and memory. They wanted the king's temple to sit inside the turning of the cosmos, not merely upon a patch of earth. You walk along the axis as the sun rises higher. The causeway runs straight beneath your feet. The lines of the temple draw you inward, while the light spreads outward across the plain. It is a strange reversal. Your body moves toward darkness and sanctity. The day moves toward openness and heat. The stones begin to warm. Dew vanishes from grass. Voices stir across the enclosure. A priest moves quietly near an entrance. A worker carries a vessel. A bird lands on a parapet, looks around with absurd self-importance, and flies away as though it has inspected the empire and found it acceptable. The sky continues its work without concern. A quirky fringe claim sometimes says that Angkor Wat was designed as a complete star map, preserving knowledge from a forgotten civilization older than recorded history. That claim reaches far beyond solid evidence, but it shows how the monument invites cosmic imagination. Its scale and symmetry make people feel that some larger code must be waiting inside the stone. Perhaps there is a code, not a hidden technology, a human code. The code is the desire to connect one life, one reign, one society, to something that does not die. The sun rises beyond kings, stars move beyond wars, seasons return beyond grief. By tying architecture to celestial rhythms, builders place fragile human order inside a pattern that feels eternal. This is not small thinking. It is also not purely comforting. If the temple reflects cosmic order, then disorder on earth becomes more troubling. A failed harvest, a rebellion, a drought, or a military defeat is not merely practical difficulty. It threatens the image of harmony that the king and temple are meant to embody. When rulers claim the heavens, cloudy days become politically awkward. You continue through the morning light, and the temple reveals new alignments of shadow. Doorways frame doorways, galleries guide vision, towers appear, disappear, and reappear as you move. The structure teaches you that perspective changes truth. From one spot, a tower stands alone. From another, several merge into one. From another, the whole plan opens like a diagram. The sky has joined the architecture, or the architecture has joined the sky. The scholarly debate over astronomy at Angkor Wat will likely remain careful and unfinished, as all good debates should. Some alignments may be intentional and ritualized. Others may be the natural result of symmetry, orientation, and sacred planning. Yet the deeper fact is clear. The temple was made in a world where earth and heaven were not strangers. You pause near a doorway and look back toward the brightening east. The sun has cleared the towers now. The dramatic moment has passed, but the world feels subtly rearranged. The moat shines, the carvings sharpen, the shadows grow shorter. Morning has made the temple visible, and visibility has made it seem newly made. For a moment, you imagine the builders watching such light fall across unfinished stone. Did they adjust, measure, argue, approve? Did they pause in satisfaction when sunrise struck a line exactly as expected? Did someone, somewhere, say nothing but smile? The answer is gone. The light remains. And in that light, Angkor Wat offers another quiet secret. It is not only a temple placed under the sky. It is a temple that asks the sky to become part of its body, one dawn at a time. You enter the inner world of ritual, where stone is no longer only structure, story, or celestial measure. It becomes a place of breath, offering, repetition, and guarded silence. The air changes in these chambers. It feels closer, cooler, and more attentive. Outside, the courtyards gather heat. Inside, shadow gathers meaning. The scent comes first. Incense smoke curls through narrow spaces. Oil lamps soften the dark. Flowers rest in careful arrangements, their fragrance mixing with wax. Stone dust, and the faint dampness held inside walls. A priest moves quietly across the floor, his steps measured, his gaze lowered. Another prepares vessels, cloth, water, lamps, and food for offering. Nothing here is casual. Even small movements matter. Ritual gives rhythm to sacred architecture. Without it, a temple is a magnificent shell. With it, the building becomes active, inhabited by attention. Records from Angkorian inscriptions confirm that major temples were supported by lands, personnel, offerings, and carefully assigned duties. Scholars from institutions such as Yale, Oxford, and the University of California have studied these records as evidence that Khmer temples functioned as living religious and economic institutions. You stand near an entrance and watch service unfold. The priest does not perform for a crowd in the modern sense. The most important audience is unseen. The god receives the offering, or rather, the divine presence within the image receives honor through carefully repeated acts. Water is poured, lamps are lit, flowers are placed, words are spoken in a steady cadence that softens the edges of thought. The ritual feels slow because it is meant to be slow. Speed would be rude. A sacred chamber does not welcome hurry. It asks each gesture to arrive with intention. The lifting of a lamp, the placing of a blossom, the washing of an image, the sounding of a bell or conch, all become parts of a pattern older than the individuals performing it. The person changes. The act continues. That continuity is powerful. It turns human frailty into institution. One priest may be tired, another may be ambitious, a third may secretly be wondering whether breakfast was sufficient. Yet the ritual remains larger than mood. It tells the community that order is being maintained, even when private minds wander. In that sense, ceremony is both spiritual practice and social technology, which is a rather elegant trick. The deity most closely associated with Angkor Wat's original dedication is Vishnu, honored in a royal context shaped by Indian religious ideas and Khmer statecraft. This association appears through art, inscriptions, and the temple's narrative program. Yet scholars still debate the full ritual life of the sanctuary, including how royal ceremonies, divine images, funerary meanings, and daily worship may have interacted inside the monument. The uncertainty does not empty the space, it makes it deeper. You imagine a central image, adorned, approached, washed, perfumed, and honored. The image is stone or metal, yet not merely stone or metal once consecrated. The sacred world does not treat matter as dead. Matter can be awakened, invited, charged, and served. A statue can become a focus through which divine presence is encountered. To modern ears, this may sound strange. To the ancient temple, it is ordinary. A doorway marks more than an entrance. It defines a change in condition. The person who crosses it should be prepared, purified, or at least aware that a boundary has been passed. Not everyone enters every space. Hierarchy shapes access. Priests, royals, attendants, and selected participants move where others cannot. Sacred secrecy is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply a closed door and a rule everyone understands. You hear a low chant moving through the stone. The sound does not travel evenly. It pools beneath ceilings, slips through openings, and fades in corners. The temple shapes the chant, returning it altered. A single voice can become larger without becoming loud. This is one reason ritual inside stone feels different from speech under open sky. The building listens back. Outside the inner chambers, temple personnel sustain the unseen work. Offerings must be prepared, lamps need oil, floors must be swept, garlands must be made before they wilt. Storage rooms must be watched, sacred objects must be guarded. Scribes must record donations and obligations. The invisible divine economy runs on very visible labor. A council decree or inscriptional record from the Khmer world could assign villages, rice fields, servants, dancers, musicians, cooks, and ritual specialists to a temple foundation. Such records prove that worship was not separate from administration. Devotion required supply lines. Holiness had paperwork. One suspects the gods were spared the paperwork, which is one advantage of being divine. You pass a group of dancers waiting in a shaded space. They are not carved stone figures now, but living bodies preparing for sacred performance. Anklets rest near their feet. Hands practice controlled gestures. Their posture is careful, their faces composed. Dance in this setting is not merely entertainment, it is offering, discipline, and embodied story. The body becomes a script, a turn of the wrist, a bend of the knee, a measured glance. Each carries meaning shaped by training. The dancers are part of the temple's ritual life, though the exact nature of performance at Angkor Wat remains debated among historians. Some scholars emphasize courtly ceremony, others temple service, and others the long relationship between sacred performance and royal display. You watch them prepare in quiet concentration. The world outside may be muddy, loud, and filled with ordinary annoyance. Here, the body is edited into grace. That does not mean the dancers are not human. Their feet ache, their teachers correct them. Someone is probably jealous of someone else's jewelry. Sacred beauty often rests on very human backstage feelings. Still, when movement begins, the room changes. The dance is slow, controlled, almost suspended. Fingers open like flowers. Feet place themselves with exactness. Eyes shift with deliberate calm. The dance does not rush toward climax. It unfolds as a sequence of presences, as if time itself has been taught manners. A quirky later belief around Angkor suggests that certain chambers held voices even when no one was inside, as though chants remained trapped in stone. There is no scientific proof of ghostly sound lingering for centuries, of course. Yet anyone who has stood inside an ancient sanctuary understands why such stories appear. Silence in these places often feels occupied. You move deeper into that silence. A lamp flame trembles beside a wall. Its light touches a carved figure and then withdraws. The face appears alive for one breath, then returns to shadow. This is not a trick in the cheap sense. It is the old partnership between fire and sacred art. The reliefs and images were never meant only for harsh daylight. They belonged also to flicker, fragrance, chant, and partial seeing. Partial seeing matters. Mystery grows where vision is incomplete. The temple does not expose everything. It lets darkness participate. It lets the mind finish what the eye cannot reach. This is why inner sanctuaries can feel larger than their dimensions. They contain not only space, but expectation. Scholarly debate continues over how ordinary worshippers experienced Angkor Wat during its earliest centuries. Some may have participated mainly in outer zones, processions, festivals, and offerings connected to temple life. Others, especially elites and ritual specialists, moved closer to the core. Access likely varied by status, occasion, and sacred rule. The temple therefore creates many experiences at once. For a king, it is divine kingship. For a priest, it is duty. For a dancer, it is disciplined offering. For a cook, it is food prepared before dawn. For a villager at the boundary, it is awe, obligation, and perhaps hope. Sacred places are never experienced evenly. They are shared, but not equally. You stand in the dimness and feel the complexity settle gently. The great monument is not asleep. It is kept awake by ritual. Lamps must be lit again tomorrow. Flowers must be replaced. Words must be spoken. Images must be tended. Sacred order is not achieved once and abandoned. It is renewed through repetition. That is the quiet heart of the sanctuary. Repetition is not emptiness. It is devotion surviving the weather of days. One offering resembles another, yet each belongs to a different morning, a different hand, a different need. A mother prays for a child. A noble prays for favor. A priest prays correctly because correctness itself is part of the offering. The king prays through architecture, whether present or absent. The incense thins as evening approaches. The stone exhales coolness. A lamp is carried away, leaving one corridor darker than it was. Outside, the world continues with insects, water, rice, dust, and smoke. Inside, the chamber holds a last trace of fragrance. You do not receive a clear answer here. Ritual rarely explains itself to strangers. It works through continuity, gesture, and nearness to things considered sacred. Angkor Wat's stones may impress the eye from far away, but its inner power depends on these small, repeated acts, done carefully where few can see them. And in the hush behind the walls, another hidden truth becomes clear. The temple was not only built once by labor, it had to be awakened every day by silence, flame, fragrance, and human attention. You turn outward from the sacred enclosure and enter the empire that makes such sacredness possible. The moat no longer feels like an ending. It becomes a threshold between concentrated holiness and the wide human world that feeds it. Beyond the water, Angkor spreads into roads, villages, rice fields, workshops, shrines, forests, and military routes, all joined by obligation and movement. The air grows wider here. You smell smoke from cooking fires, wet rice shoots, animal dung, palm sugar, and warm dust. A cart creaks along a raised road. Dogs bark at nothing important, as dogs have bravely done since time began. A woman balances a basket against her hip. A man leads cattle through a field edge, speaking to them with the resigned patience of someone who knows cattle have opinions. This is the empire beyond the monument. Angkor Wat stands at the center of attention, but no temple of such scale can exist without a larger world of production. Archaeological surveys and mapping projects by major universities and research institutes have shown that Angkor was connected to a broad settlement landscape with occupation mounds, ponds, roads, canals, and agricultural zones extending across many kilometers. The sacred capital was not just a cluster of temples. It was a regional organism. You walk along a raised road lined with water channels. The road holds slightly above the damp land, giving passage through seasonal difficulty. During rains, such roads become lifelines. During dry months, they gather dust and heat. They carry officials, traders, messengers, pilgrims, soldiers, animals, tribute, and gossip. Gossip, one imagines, moved faster than official messages because it required fewer seals and less dignity. The road speaks of control. It also speaks of connection. A kingdom becomes real when orders can travel. Taxes must be gathered. Labor must be called. Rice must be moved. Religious offerings must arrive at the right place. Armies must reach threatened borders. News of rebellion, flood, harvest, or victory must move through space before power can respond. Angkor's road system connected the capital with provincial temples and distant regions. Scholars studying Khmer infrastructure have identified routes that stretch toward areas of present-day Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, linking political authority with sacred sites and military movement. The exact organization of some routes remains debated, but the broad pattern reveals an empire thinking through distance. You pause beside a roadside shrine. It is smaller than the great temple, but it is not insignificant. Small sacred places mark routes, settlements, and local obligations. A traveler leaves a flower. A woman touches the stone briefly before continuing. A child stares at a carved guardian and decides, wisely, not to stand too close. The empire is not only ruled from above, it is lived from below. Rice fields open beyond the road, shining with shallow water. Farmers bend in rows, their reflections trembling beside them. Their work is slow, repetitive, and absolutely central. The temple's carvings may show gods and kings, but the empire survives because people place seedlings into mud. The gesture is humble, but its consequences are enormous. No rice, no armies. No rice, no priests. No rice, no towers rising in sacred symmetry. Every empire hides a field beneath its crown. Angkor's grandeur rests on agricultural surplus, water control, and the ability to gather human effort from villages spread across the plain. The monarchy's divine image depends on farmers whose backs ache by sunset. Research from environmental archaeology and landscape studies confirms that rice agriculture and water management were central to Angkor's growth. Scholars from institutions such as Columbia, the University of Chicago, and the University of Oregon have examined how climate, settlement, and hydraulic systems shaped Angkorian society. Their work helps reveal the practical foundation beneath the sacred skyline. You step near a village built on raised ground. Houses stand on posts above damp earth. Ladders lead to shaded interiors. Chickens scratch below. Clay jars sit near steps. Nets dry in the sun. Children play beside a pond, inventing worlds that adults will interrupt with chores. The village is part of the kingdom, but it also has its own rhythms, arguments, marriages, jokes, debts, and small triumphs. A temple official may see this village as a unit of labor or obligation. The villagers likely see the official as a man who arrives at inconvenient times. Power depends on translation between these views. The court speaks in duties, gifts, titles, lands, and sacred service. Villagers experience those words as grain delivered, work demanded, sons recruited, daughters trained, animals borrowed, or days taken from their own fields. Monumental beauty can be admired, but it is never free. That thought should not make the temple less beautiful. It should make it more honest. A great civilization is not a dream floating above the ground. It is an arrangement of burdens, benefits, beliefs, and compromises. Some people gain honor. Some gain protection. Some gain employment. Some lose time, grain, or freedom. History rarely offers clean, moral furniture. It gives us rooms crowded with mixed things. You hear drums from a distant procession. Perhaps officials are moving along the road. Perhaps soldiers are mustering. Perhaps a festival draws people toward a shrine. The sound is low and steady, rolling across the flat land. It reaches the fields before the procession itself appears, making heads turn. Military power forms another layer of Angkor's world. Suryavarman II is remembered not only as a builder, but as a ruler associated with campaigns and expansion. Inscriptions and reliefs suggest the importance of armies, royal command, and martial display in his reign. Historians continue to debate the details of specific campaigns and political relationships with neighboring powers, but they agree that warfare and diplomacy shaped the Khmer Empire's reach. The soldiers you imagine are not carved now. They sweat. They carry shields, spears, bows, supplies, and private fears. They march along roads that temples helped justify and rice helped support. Their officers care about order. Their feet care about blisters. Military glory, viewed from close range, often smells like leather, dust, and tired men. A quirky tale from later regional memory sometimes pictures Angkor's armies as so vast that their marching shook fish from ponds. This is not a historical measurement, obviously. It is folklore doing what folklore does best, turning scale into exaggeration. Yet the tale preserves a sense that Angkorian power felt enormous to those who lived near its shadow. Trade also moves through this world. Goods pass between forest, field, river, and court. Resin, timber, metals, ceramics, textiles, spices, animals, and luxury objects circulate through networks both local and distant. Chinese records from the broader period describe Southeast Asian kingdoms participating in regional exchange, while archaeology finds imported ceramics and trade goods across Angkorian contexts. The capital looked inward to gods and kings, but it was not sealed from the world. You imagine a trader arriving with ceramics wrapped carefully for transport. He complains about the road, praises his own goods, exaggerates demand, and pretends not to notice that everyone else is also exaggerating. Markets thrive on performance. So do royal courts, which may explain why they understand each other. The empire is built through many languages of value. Rice values survival. Stone values permanence. Gold values display. Water values timing. Ritual values correctness. Roads value movement. Law values obedience. Memory values repetition. Angkor brings these languages together without making them identical. That is why the city feels so alive. It is not one thing, it is a sacred capital, agricultural system, political center, ritual landscape, military hub, and human settlement. Its greatness lies not only in monumental scale, but in the ability to coordinate difference across space. Every road leading away from Angkor Wat also leads back to it, carrying goods, labor, news, loyalty, resentment, prayer, and hope. The afternoon fades over the fields. Smoke rises from villages. Water in the paddies reflects a reddening sky. Cattle return slowly, as though performing the least dramatic procession in the empire. A child runs along a bank, laughing, while an adult calls a warning too late to be useful. Life continues beneath grandeur. That is the quiet revelation. The largest temple stands because an entire world stands around it, working, yielding, resisting, feeding, trading, marching, praying, and remembering. Remove the fields, and the towers become impossible. Remove the roads, and command grows weak. Remove the villages, and holiness loses its daily servants. As evening settles beyond the moat, Angkor Wat glows in the distance, no longer isolated in your mind. It belongs to every channel, every field, every cart track, every tired animal, every official tablet, and every household fire across the plain. And in that widening dusk, another hidden truth becomes visible. The temple was never alone. It was the still center of a moving empire, and the empire moved through every life that touched its shadow. You return to the sacred enclosure in a quieter century of feeling, where the temple's meaning begins to shift without losing its power. The towers still rise above the moat. The galleries still hold their carved armies and divine stories. The stone still warms in morning light and cools in evening shadow. Yet the prayers moving through the monument are changing. Faith does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it enters like mist. At Angkor Wat, the original devotion associated with Vishnu gradually gives way to a Buddhist presence that will endure through later centuries. This transformation is not a simple replacement. As though one sacred world closes a door and another opens it politely, religious change is rarely so tidy. Images are reinterpreted. Spaces are reused. Old forms receive new attention. Memory bends, but does not vanish. The scent of incense remains. The hands that offer flowers remain. The body still bows. The lamp still trembles. The chamber still gathers silence. What changes is the story carried in the heart of worship. A sanctuary, once shaped by royal Hindu devotion, becomes a place where Buddhist practice settles into the old stone. Patient and persistent. Records, art historical studies, and later inscriptions confirm that Angkor Wat became an important Buddhist sanctuary. Scholars from institutions such as Cornell, Yale, and the University of Hawaii have examined how religious transformation in Cambodia unfolded across centuries, shaped by royal patronage, local devotion, monastic communities, and wider Theravada Buddhist networks. The process was layered, not abrupt. You walk through a gallery and notice the carvings differently. The old scenes remain visible, but they are no longer confined to their first meaning. Mythic battles and cosmic churning still cover the walls. Vishnu's presence still breathes through the temple plan and reliefs. Yet Buddhist worshippers can move through these spaces without needing to erase them. Sacred landscapes are often more adaptable than doctrinal summaries suggest. Stone survives by being reimagined. That is one of its talents. A monk in saffron-colored cloth moves across the courtyard. His steps are quiet. The color of his robe glows against gray sandstone, startlingly warm in the morning air. He carries no royal parasol, no weapon, no emblem of conquest. His presence changes the emotional temperature of the place. The temple seems less like a king's cosmic claim and more like a shelter for contemplation. Not entirely, of course. Monks are human too. They need food, shelter, patrons, rules, and patience with other monks who may snore. Spiritual life is not made of floating serenity alone. It depends on donors, communities, repairs, teachers, novices, and the practical administration of daily needs. Even renunciation requires someone to cook rice. The Buddhist life of Angkor Wat draws the monument into new networks of devotion. Pilgrims arrive. Local communities continue to honor the place. Images of the Buddha appear, sometimes inserted into older spaces, sometimes replacing or altering earlier sacred forms, in some cases across Angkor. Hindu images were modified or reinterpreted under changing religious conditions, leaving traces of both continuity and disruption. The scholarly debate remains open over the timing, pace, and social depth of Cambodia's religious transformation. Some historians emphasize royal conversion and state change. Others stress gradual local practice, monastic networks, and the long coexistence of older beliefs with Buddhist devotion. The most convincing picture is not a clean break, but a slow turning of the sacred wheel. You sit near a pillar as afternoon light slides across the floor. A novice monk sweeps dust from a threshold. The broom makes a soft scraping sound, steady and unhurried. Dust returns, because dust is extremely committed. The novice sweeps anyway. There is a philosophy hidden there, though he may simply have been told to finish before eating. The act feels simple. It is also symbolic. To care for a sacred place is to accept repetition. The temple is not preserved by admiration alone. It is preserved by sweeping, repairing, repainting, relighting, remembering, teaching, and walking the same paths until they become part of communal identity. Buddhist presence helps Angkor Wat remain inhabited in meaning, not merely admired as old stone. You notice small devotional traces, a flower placed before an image, a thin line of smoke curling in the air, gold leaf pressed by careful fingers, a candle burned down to a soft pool of wax. These are not imperial gestures, they are intimate offerings, small enough to vanish by morning, meaningful enough to be repeated for centuries. Here the scale of Angkor Wat changes. The vast temple becomes personal. A person kneels beneath towers raised by kings and asks for peace, merit, healing, forgiveness, or guidance. The monument that once proclaimed royal cosmic power now receives the private burdens of ordinary lives. A mother may pray for a child. A traveler may ask for safe passage. An old man may sit quietly and ask nothing at all. That is a profound transformation. It does not destroy the earlier temple. It softens it. It draws it into a different kind of endurance. Royal power seeks permanence through grandeur. Buddhist practice often finds permanence through impermanence, through the acceptance that all things change, even stone kingdoms and the names of kings. The irony is gentle but sharp. A monument built to make kingship feel eternal becomes a teacher of change. Art historians have observed Buddhist modifications and devotional uses within Angkor Wat over long periods, showing that the temple's later history is not an afterthought, it is central to its survival. Without living religious use, the monument might have become far more silent, far sooner. Worship kept memory breathing inside the walls. A quirky local belief sometimes tells that certain Buddha images at Angkor Wat possessed special protective power, guarding travelers, monks, or nearby communities from misfortune. Such stories vary by place and generation. They cannot be treated as straightforward historical evidence, but they reveal how people continued to experience the temple as active, not abandoned. That matters. A ruin is something the present has stopped needing. Angkor Wat did not fully become that. It remained a sacred place for many Cambodians, even as political centers shifted and forests reclaimed parts of the wider urban landscape. Monks and worshippers helped preserve its emotional continuity. Travelers from abroad might later describe it as a rediscovered wonder. But for local communities, the temple had not simply disappeared from the world. You walk through a doorway where an old image has been altered. The surface bears marks of time, devotion, damage, and renewal. It is difficult to tell where one age ends and another begins. That difficulty is honest. Sacred history rarely moves in clean lines. It accumulates. The temple becomes a palimpsest of faith, One layer does not fully erase the other. Vishnu remains in stone memory. Buddhist devotion fills living practice, local spirits, ancestral reverence, royal memory, and village traditions may all hover near the edges. The sacred world is crowded, and perhaps more durable because of that crowding. Even silence feels plural here. It holds ancient chants, later prayers, the scrape of brooms, the murmur of monks, and the breath of visitors standing unsure of what they are allowed to feel. The temple does not force them into one interpretation. It receives them, changes them slightly, and lets them pass. For a moment, you watch sunlight touch a Buddha image placed within the old stone order. The face is calm, the eyes lowered, the expression composed beyond victory or defeat. Around it, the older architecture still speaks of cosmic mountains, royal ambition, and divine preservation. The two sacred languages do not become identical, but they coexist in a deep and layered quiet. Perhaps that is Angkor Wat's rarest achievement. It survives not because it remained the same, but because it could change without becoming empty. Its stones accepted new prayers. Its chambers learned new rhythms. Its vastness became spacious enough for another path to holiness. Evening enters softly. The monks move through fading light. A final ribbon of incense dissolves near a wall. The moat outside turns silver under the dimming sky. No trumpet announces the change of faith. No single date explains it completely. The transformation happens like water-wearing stone, patient, persistent, almost invisible until the shape has altered. And in that gentle alteration, another hidden truth appears. The temple's greatness is not only that humans built it so large, it is that generations kept finding room inside it for new ways to seek peace. You feel the city grow tired, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in the slower way a body begins to carry too many burdens. The towers still stand. The moat still reflects the sky. Monks still move through sacred chambers, and villagers still work the fields. Yet beneath the visible calm, pressures gather in water, politics, climate, warfare, and memory. Great cities rarely fall in one moment. They loosen. First, a canal does not clear as quickly as it once did. Then an embankment fails after a violent rain. Then a dry season lasts longer than expected. Then a noble family shifts its loyalty, or a trade route changes, or an army arrives when granaries are thin. None of these alone explains everything. Together, they become a weight too complex for easy storytelling. Angkor's decline has been studied by archaeologists, climate scientists, historians, and environmental researchers at institutions such as Columbia University, the University of Sydney, and the University of Oregon. Tree ring data, sediment studies, landscape mapping, and inscriptions all suggest that climate stress, hydraulic vulnerability, political change, and regional conflict contributed to Angkor's transformation. The story is not one of sudden disappearance. It is a long reordering of power and settlement. You stand beside a channel choked with plants. The water moves, but slowly. Leaves gather in corners where maintenance once kept flow clear. Silt lifts the bed. A wooden control structure leans at an awkward angle, as though embarrassed by its own failure. The sound here is not the confident rush of managed water, but a sluggish murmuring through roots and debris. Water had made Angkor strong. Now water tests it. During periods of severe drought, reservoirs shrink and fields suffer. During sudden intense monsoon years, canals and embankments can be overwhelmed. Research published in major scientific journals has linked Angkor's later stress to episodes of unusual climate instability, including prolonged droughts and extreme rainfall. A system designed for seasonal rhythm may struggle when rhythm becomes violence. That is the unsettling part. Angkor's waterworks were not primitive. They were extraordinary. Yet complexity can become fragility when conditions change beyond expectation. The same networks that once distributed life can spread failure if channels break. Sediment accumulates, or flows become harder to control. A great system does not need to be foolish to become vulnerable. It only needs the world to change faster than repair can follow. You walk along a raised bank as clouds gather. The air thickens. Thunder speaks beyond the tree line. Farmers look upward with careful faces, reading possibilities in the color of the sky. Rain can rescue rice, but too much rain can flatten fields, breach banks, and turn roads into streams. Water is never simply good or bad here. It is a visitor whose mood matters. Political pressure moves beside environmental strain. The Khmer Empire faced changing relationships with neighboring powers, including the rising strength of Thai polities in mainland Southeast Asia. Historians continue to debate the timing and impact of military events, including attacks associated with Ayutthaya in later centuries. The old idea of one catastrophic sack emptying Angkor has given way to more layered interpretations, where conflict is one force among several. Power shifts like water, too. It follows opportunity. A capital that once drew tribute may begin to lose its grip. Provincial leaders may become harder to command. Trade patterns may favor other centers. A court may find better access to maritime commerce farther south. Religious change may alter the relationship between kingship, temple building, and political legitimacy. Each adjustment seems practical in the moment. Over generations, the map changes. You pass a village where fewer houses stand than expected. Some platforms remain, but their edges are overgrown. A pond still holds water, green and quiet. A broken jar lies near a tree root, half buried, still patiently waiting to be useful again. Smoke rises from a few homes, but the place feels thinned, as though a song has lost several voices. People do not vanish because a historian needs drama. They move, they adapt, retreat, return, rebuild, change crops, follow leaders, seek safer land, or remain stubbornly where their grandparents lived. Angkor's transformation was not the extinction of a people. Khmer society continued. Cambodian civilization continued. The sacred and cultural inheritance did not disappear because urban patterns changed. That fact matters deeply. A city can decline without a culture dying. A quirky fringe story sometimes claims that Angkor was abandoned overnight after a curse, a prophecy, or a divine warning. Such tales have atmosphere, and one understands their appeal, especially beside dark water and vine-covered walls. Yet archaeological evidence points to gradual change, continued occupation in some areas, and ongoing religious use at Angkor Wat. The mystery is not a single vanished night. It is persistence inside transformation. You hear a repair crew working near a damaged embankment. Men carry earth in baskets. Others place timber. Their feet sink in mud. A supervisor gestures toward a breach where water has cut a harsh bite through the bank. The repair is necessary, exhausting, and perhaps temporary. Maintenance becomes harder when storms grow stronger. Labor becomes scarcer, or authority weakens. There is dignity in the attempt, There is sorrow, too. For generations, Angkor's landscape required coordination. When coordination weakens, the land remembers quickly. Channels ignore old intentions. Trees root in walls. Sediment fills carefully shaped lines. Water chooses the easiest path, not the most sacred one. Scholars still debate how directly environmental stress caused political decline. Some emphasize climate and hydraulic breakdown. Others stress shifts in economy, warfare, religion, and governance. The strongest interpretations treat Angkor as a coupled human and environmental system, where stress in one part affects the whole. It is not one cause, it is a web tightening. You look back toward the distant towers. They remain beautiful. That is almost painful. Monuments can outlast the systems that made them. A tower can stand while the tax structure fails. A gallery can remain while roads lose traffic. A moat can shine while villages shrink. Stone possesses a kind of unfair calm, refusing to show every wound in the society around it. Yet even stone changes, cracks widen, water seeps, roots press, carvings soften under weather, birds nest in openings. Moss darkens shaded surfaces. The temple continues to endure. But endurance is not the same as immunity. Nothing escapes time. Some things merely negotiate longer. In a courtly residence, officials may argue over priorities, repair the canal or fund a military campaign, support a monastery or maintain a road, move resources southward or hold the old center. Every choice leaves something unfed. Decline often feels like this from inside, not catastrophe, but too many urgent needs and not enough certainty. That is very human, almost uncomfortably so. You can imagine a scribe recording gifts with steady hand, while privately sensing that the world outside the tablet has grown unstable. You can imagine a farmer remembering higher water in childhood. You can imagine a monk sweeping a courtyard that receives fewer visitors. You can imagine a noble family deciding that loyalty is best understood as flexibility, which is a polished word for survival. The city grows tired because people grow tired too. They repair, adapt, pray, bargain, migrate, and remember. They do not know they are living inside something later generations will call decline. They know only that reigns have changed, demands continue, enemies exist, and the old arrangements no longer hold quite as firmly. The evening sky darkens over Angkor. Rain begins with a few large drops on leaves, then spreads across stone, road, pond, and roof. The sound gathers until every surface speaks water. The moat trembles, channels swell, courtyards shine. For a moment, the entire landscape seems alive again with motion, as if the old system might wake fully and command the storm. But storms do not take orders forever. You stand beneath shelter and watch the rain veil the towers. Their shapes blur, then return, then blur again. The city is not gone. It is changing form. Sacred life continues. Human settlement continues. Memory continues. Yet the immense urban order that once gathered water, labor, kingship, and stone into a single great system begins to loosen its hold. And in the rain-soaked silence, another hidden truth emerges. Angkor did not simply fall. It endured, altered, and let its power drain slowly into new channels of history. You walk into the centuries when the forest becomes one of Angkor's keepers, not its destroyer, not entirely, but a slow green witness pressing close to stone. Roots enter cracks, vines hang over walls, Birds nest in ledges where royal symbols once caught the sun. Moss darkens the shaded corners, and rain leaves shining trails down carved faces. The temple is not swallowed all at once. It is visited by leaves. The wider city changes, thins, and rearranges itself, but Angkor Wat remains known, used and revered by local communities. Monks continue to live near sacred spaces. Worship continues in altered forms. Pilgrims arrive. Stories gather. Foreign visitors later describe the monument with astonishment, yet their surprise sometimes says more about them than about the place. The temple was never simply erased from Cambodian memory. That matters. Memory does not need European rediscovery to exist. The air in this later Angkor feels different. It is quieter in some places, more crowded with insects than officials. You hear the soft fall of fruit, the creak of branches, the scrape of sandals over stone. A monkey watches from a broken cornice with the grave expression of a small, corrupt minister. Then it scratches itself, which somewhat ruins the dignity. The forest changes the way stone is seen. In open royal sunlight, the temple proclaimed order. Under green shade, it becomes mysterious, intimate, and half-hidden. A doorway framed by roots feels like an entrance into time itself. A gallery darkened by leaves seems less like royal propaganda and more like a secret the earth has decided to keep. Archaeological and historical studies confirm that Angkor Wat remained an active religious site long after the political center shifted. Scholars from institutions such as the University of Hawaii, Cornell, and the French School of Asian Studies have examined inscriptions, travel accounts, conservation records, and monastic traditions showing continued use. The story is not abandonment, but altered continuity. You pass a monk seated near a weathered image. He sits with stillness that makes the stones around him seem busy. A small offering rests nearby, flowers already beginning to soften in the heat. The old galleries remain around him, filled with scenes from another religious and royal world. Yet his presence does not feel like an intrusion. It feels like another layer of care. The temple has learned to hold contradictions. A monument of kingship becomes a refuge for monks. A sacred Hindu design becomes a Buddhist place of devotion. A planned city becomes a landscape of ruins, villages, paths, and remembered names. A symbol of imperial confidence becomes an object of restoration, scholarship, pilgrimage, and national identity. Stone gathers meanings like dust, only slower. In later centuries, travelers from China, Japan, Portugal, France, and other worlds encountered Angkor in different ways. Some described its scale with wonder. Some misunderstood what they saw. Some recorded local accounts. Some arrived with colonial arrogance tucked neatly beside their notebooks, which is rarely a flattering travel accessory. Their writings became part of Angkor's global history, yet the temple's local life was older than those descriptions. Cambodian communities preserved legends, practices, names, and devotion around the site. The forest did not make Angkor meaningless. It changed the atmosphere through which meaning was approached. Silence deepened, but silence did not equal forgetting. You step into a gallery where roots have found the joints between stones. The roots are patient, muscular, and quietly impolite. They do not respect architecture. They follow moisture, shadow, and opportunity. Their pressure can crack walls, lift stones, and turn perfect human lines into uneven organic negotiations. The forest is not sentimental. It is beautiful and destructive at once. Conservation experts have long faced this difficult truth across Angkor. Remove vegetation too aggressively, and unstable stones may lose the roots that currently hold them. Leave vegetation unchecked, and roots may tear the structure apart. Preservation becomes a careful conversation with living growth, not a simple victory over nature. That debate remains active among specialists. How should a ruin be protected without erasing the very atmosphere that makes it powerful? Should restoration return a monument toward an earlier appearance, or preserve the visible passage of time? International conservation teams, Cambodian authorities, and scholars continue to balance structural safety, sacred use, tourism, authenticity, and landscape memory. There is no perfect answer, only careful choices. You pause at a fallen stone partly covered in lichen. Its carving is faint, but still readable if light touches it correctly. A fragment of jewelry, a curve of cloth, perhaps part of a divine figure. Once it belonged to a planned surface. Now it rests near roots and leaves, separated from its original place, but not entirely lost. Fragments have their own dignity. They refuse to disappear completely. A quirky tale sometimes says that certain stones of Angkor return to their proper places by moonlight, moved by spirits who remember the temple's complete form. It is not archaeology, but it is emotionally precise. Ruins make people long for wholeness. The mind sees a broken wall and quietly rebuilds it in darkness. You understand that longing as you walk. Everywhere the temple invites reconstruction, not only physical reconstruction, but imaginative repair. You see a missing tower and picture its silhouette. You see a damaged face and invent the expression. You see an empty courtyard and hear lost footsteps. The ruin makes you a collaborator, though perhaps not a very qualified one. Still, the temple tolerates you. It has tolerated kings, monks, storms, vines, scholars, colonial officers, photographers, pilgrims, and tourists wearing hats of questionable judgment. Its patience is almost rude. It continues to stand while everyone explains it differently. During the 19th and 20th centuries, Angkor became the focus of increasing international attention, archaeological study, colonial documentation, restoration campaigns, and later Cambodian national symbolism. These developments brought preservation, but also complicated questions about ownership, representation, and the power of outsiders to define heritage. The temple's meaning widened again, entering museums, textbooks, postcards, and political imagination. Yet beneath all that modern attention, the older quiet remains. A monk still lights incense, a local family still visits, a child still looks up at the towers and feels something too large for words. The temple is not only world heritage, it is near, embodied, lived, and emotionally held by people whose history is bound to its stones. You walk through late afternoon as the forest shadows lengthen. The leaves stir overhead, releasing drops from an earlier rain. The galleries cool. The moat reflects palms and sky. Somewhere a bird calls once, then stops. The silence that follows is not empty. It is layered with everything the temple has survived. The forest remembers in its own language, not in dates, not in inscriptions. It remembers by growing around absence, by holding dampness in cracks, by softening edges that were once sharp. Human memory writes names and stories. Forest memory covers, presses, hides, reveals, and returns. Together, they make Angkor Wat feel less like a finished monument than a living threshold between civilization and earth. As dusk gathers, the temple becomes both clearer and more obscure. Its towers darken against the sky. The moat turns black. The stones lose detail, then become shape, then become presence. You no longer see every carving, every joint, every wound. You feel the whole mass breathing with night. And in that green shadow, another hidden truth rises softly. Angkor Wat was never preserved by stone alone. It was kept by monks, villagers, roots, rain, stories, and the stubborn human refusal to let wonder disappear. You return to the moat at dusk, where the temple gathers every question into one still reflection. The sky has softened to violet and pale gold. The towers rise dark against the fading light, their shapes repeated in the water with slight distortions. Fish disturb the surface. Reeds move at the edge. The day exhales through warm stone and wet grass. Nothing hurries here. The temple has waited too long for hurry. Angkor Wat is often described as the largest religious monument ever built by human hands, and the phrase carries both measurement and astonishment. Its enclosure, moat, galleries, terraces, towers, sculptures, and surrounding landscape form an achievement of architecture, labor, engineering, kingship, and devotion. Research from leading universities, museums, and scientific teams has confirmed its central place within a vast urban and hydraulic civilization. Yet even that knowledge does not exhaust it. Facts bring you closer. They do not finish the experience. You know more now about kings, water, stone, labor, carvings, dawn alignments, rituals, roads, changing faith, tired cities, and forest memory. Still, the temple remains larger than explanation. This is not because evidence is weak. It is because great human works often hold more than one truth at once. Angkor Wat refuses to become only a temple, only a tomb, only a calendar, only a political statement, or only a masterpiece. It is all of these, and perhaps something quieter. You stand near the western approach and let your eyes follow the causeway across the darkening water. In the early light, that path may feel like an entrance. At dusk, it feels like a question. It asks what kind of civilization could gather such resources and attention into stone. It asks how faith and power can become beautiful together and troubling together. It asks why human beings build things far larger than survival requires. That question matters. It has no simple answer. Perhaps the builders sought divine favor. Perhaps the king sought eternity. Perhaps priests sought cosmic order. Perhaps workers sought duty, food, skill, and pride. Perhaps villagers saw burden and blessing woven together. Perhaps later monks saw not royal ambition, but a place where the mind could settle. Each answer is partial, and each partial answer is true in its own chamber. This is why Angkor Wat feels unfinished as a mystery, not unfinished in stone, unfinished in meaning. Scholars continue to debate the temple's precise symbolic program, its westward orientation, its original ritual functions, its possible funerary associations, and the details of its construction sequence. Some interpretations emphasize royal devotion to Vishnu. Others emphasize kingship, cosmology, death, astronomical planning, or the political language of empire. The strongest studies do not close the door too quickly. They let the evidence breathe. You look toward the towers and imagine them as lotus buds, mountains, royal symbols, cosmic markers, and stubborn stones resisting weather. The same form carries many burdens. That is how sacred architecture survives. It allows later generations to arrive with different needs and still find a place to stand. A modern visitor may come searching for beauty. A monk may come for devotion. A scholar may come with measurements, notes, and cautious theories. A Cambodian family may come with memory, identity, prayer, and belonging. A tired traveler may simply sit by the moat and feel strangely calm, which is not the least important response. The temple does not need everyone to understand it the same way. It only asks for attention. The water grows darker. A bat flickers above the surface, quick as a thought. The air smells of mud, cooling stone, incense drifting faintly from within, and distant food being cooked somewhere beyond the trees. Life continues around the monument with ordinary tenderness. Someone laughs, someone calls a child. Someone closes a gate. Sacred places are never entirely separate from dinner. There is comfort in that. There is truth in it, too. Grand monuments can mislead when they seem too cleanly separated from human life. Angkor Wat belongs not only to gods and kings, but to meals, sweat, rain, insects, repairs, arguments, footsteps, and the long patience of people who keep returning. The largest temple ever built by humans is not only a triumph of scale, it is a record of repeated presence. A quirky fringe belief still circles such places, claiming that hidden chambers, secret energies, or lost ancient masters hold the final explanation. It is tempting, because a single hidden answer feels satisfying. One door opens, one secret appears, one mystery ends. But Angkor Wat does not need a hidden machine beneath its floor to be profound. The visible truth is already immense. Humans built this. Humans imagined it, organized it, quarried it, moved it, carved it, prayed within it, changed it, repaired it, misunderstood it, studied it, and loved it. That fact is not ordinary. It is almost more unsettling than legend, because it reveals what our species can do when belief, hierarchy, skill, fear, beauty, and ambition converge. Not everything in that convergence is gentle. The temple's grandeur is bound to power. Labor was commanded. Resources were gathered. Society was organized through rank. Sacred beauty could support political authority. The monument can be admired without pretending it was created in a world of perfect equality or harmless devotion. Stone can be beautiful and heavy with obligation at the same time. That complexity should not frighten you away. It should deepen your seeing. A simple wonder is easy to consume and forget. A complicated wonder stays with you. Angkor Wat remains powerful because it holds admiration and unease together. It is magnificent, but not innocent. It is sacred, but also administrative. It is serene, but born from effort. It is ancient, yet still alive in the present. You walk slowly along the moat as twilight thickens. The towers blur in reflection, then sharpen when the water calms. This doubling feels like a final lesson. There is the temple above, made of stone. There is the temple below, made of water and light. One seems solid, one trembles, yet both are real to the eye. History is like that, solid and trembling. The record gives inscriptions, stones, measurements, environmental data, carvings, and settlement maps. Imagination gives breath, sound, heat, fear, patience, and the private lives that records miss. Neither is enough alone. Evidence without imagination becomes dry. Imagination without evidence floats away. Together, they let the past approach without pretending it has been fully captured. The last light slips from the upper towers. Birds settle into the trees. The sky deepens toward blue-black. Angkor Wat becomes less detailed and more immense, reduced to silhouette, water, and silence. In darkness, the temple stops explaining itself. It returns to presence. Perhaps that is where the story rests. Not solved, not lost. The truth about Angkor Wat was never hidden only by jungle, distance, or broken records. It was hidden by scale itself, by the difficulty of seeing a monument as architecture, city, labor, faith, politics, landscape, and memory at once. To see it truly, you must let it remain many things. You stand at the water's edge, and the reflection trembles softly. The largest temple ever built by humans still asks what humans were trying to become when they raised it. Closer to gods, closer to kings, closer to order, closer to permanence. Or perhaps closer to the quiet hope that something made with mortal hands might outlast mortal fear. And perhaps, beneath the towers and the dark water, the story is not yet complete. The night settles gently around the moat. The stones lose their heat little by little, and the air grows kinder against your skin. You do not need to carry every question away from this place. Some questions can remain beside the water, resting beneath the reflection of towers. Some mysteries are not doors to force open. They are lamps left burning very softly in the distance. You breathe in the scent of wet grass, old stone, and fading incense. The world beyond the temple becomes quiet, not empty, just quiet enough for thought to loosen. The king is gone. The workers are gone. The first priests, the old dancers, the messengers on raised roads, the farmers in shining fields, all have passed into the long sleep of history. Yet something of their movement remains here, held in lines of stone and the dark patience of water. Your mind can rest now. The temple does not require an answer tonight. It does not ask you to measure every tower, name every ruler, or solve every debate. It only asks you to stand for a while in the calm between knowing and wondering. That is a peaceful place, if you let it be. The moat grows black under the sky. A small ripple crosses it, widening, softening, disappearing. The towers hold still above it. The stars appear slowly, one by one, as they have appeared over Angkor for centuries of prayer. Rain, silence, and return. Let the stone become distant. Let the water become smooth. Let the old city fade into forest, moonlight, and breath. And as your thoughts grow slower, imagine the temple still standing in the night, not waiting for discovery, not demanding certainty, simply being there, vast and quiet, while the world sleeps around it. End of script. Good night.